Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. It's time to get a raise. That is what workers across America want. That is what workers across America need. But for white collar workers, it's actually prime time to get a big raise. In fact, pay increases for people in business and professional sectors are starting to outpace gains for low wage workers. Welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. This episode is based on this article that you see on your screen from the Wall Street Journal. As always, we'll provide you with a link to this resource in the description section below. So here's what's going on. White collar workers are getting huge pay increases as they have more bargaining power. In fact, Wall Street banks are boosting compensation for employees. Consumer lenders are seeing their biggest pay bumps in more than a decade. Legal firms are paying more money. Pay for finance, information and professional employees rose 4.4% in January compared to a year earlier, outpacing the 4% wage growth for all workers. In fact, workers in higher wage sectors experienced the fastest month-over-month earnings growth in January. Wages in the professional and business services sector, which by the way includes jobs in management, law and engineering, rose 0.8% from a month earlier. That was well above the 0.1% pay increase for those in leisure and hospitality. Let's take a look at this chart that shows you the median hourly wages changed from a year earlier, the 12-month moving average. And you can see that those in finance, information, professional and business services saw higher median hourly wages increasing month to month compared to the general trend, compared to the overall trend that is demonstrated in orange on your screen. Here's a quote from Nick Bunker, who's an economist at the job site Indeed. For most of last year, wage growth was really strong for lots of low-wage workers. Now, the overall labor market is just tighter, and that is boosting the bargaining power for the rest of the workforce. Now, more and more companies, folks, are shifting to longer-term remote work as a direct result of the pandemic. But the fact is, some workers are simply making more money than others. In fact, the recovery from the pandemic has been uneven and has resulted in good news for high-wage earners who, by the way, can withstand the impact of inflation, who don't have to worry about childcare as much because they can keep an eye on their kids while they work from home. But it has resulted in a significant impact, and it's resulted in bad news for low-wage earners who get impacted by inflation, who spend a significant portion of their salary on gas, on utilities. In fact, they end up spending so much money on gas and utilities, which, by the way, have become more expensive, that they have to compromise on food and medication. They feel the effects of inflation much more. Annual inflation is running above 7%, which, by the way, is the highest in 40 years. And this means that rising prices are wiping out wage gains for many people. Workers could start to see their extra dollars go towards inflation while wage growth remains elevated. In other words, people can make more money, but they won't have much money left over. Now, pay is rising because actually companies can't find enough workers, and because of COVID, less and less people were available in the workforce. More and more people retired. Millions of people sat on the sidelines due to childcare issues. In fact, many workers in the law industry burnt out from 90-hour work weeks and insufficient holidays, and this actually left during the pandemic, and this became a very challenging situation and created a lot of labor constraints. Now, labor constraints also occurred due to the aging of the population, immigration restrictions, and changing work-life preferences. Now, businesses are continuing to pay workers more as they try and fill job openings, but the situation is far from ideal, because here's what happens. As prices increase, some individuals come out ahead, specifically the high-wage earners, and some individuals simply don't. For example, workers who switch jobs in finance, accounting, technology, and legal do get paid more money and they can keep up with inflation, but other workers simply don't have any wiggle room. In fact, a lot of research suggests that there's a strong link between workers who resign and wage gains. In other words, when workers decide they want to resign and work elsewhere, they actually see a wage increase in the United States of America. In fact, about 3.6% of workers in professional and business services quit their jobs in December, up from 2.8% at the start of 2021. Now, this suggests that more and more white-collar workers could simply quit so that they can get a higher salary elsewhere. So what is happening, folks, is that wage growth is broadening. Let's take a look at this chart, which shows you the average hourly earnings by industry wage tier, and this is the 3-month growth rate, and the orange represents August 2021, and the blue represents December of 2021, a couple of months ago. Now, you'll start to see that for lower wage earners, essentially Sequentially, their earnings were slightly ahead in August, but for middle wage earners and higher wage earners, now we fast forward into the last couple of months, the higher wage earners are actually making significantly more money. In fact, job switchers are seeing the strongest wage growth, and companies are feeling pressure to raise pay to keep current employees. Firms are actually trying to retain workers because there are a lot of poaching attempts going on, and they are trying to keep up with the high cost of living by paying workers more. So this creates a very challenging situation, folks, because Wall Street banks are paying big money to keep their employees from jumping ship. JP Morgan Chase, for example, said it had spent an additional $3.6 billion on compensation in the year 2021. Here's a quote from the JP Morgan Chase chief executive, Jamie Dimon. He said this in an earnings call last month. There's a lot more compensation for our top bankers and traders and managers. We will be competitive in pay. If that squeezes margins a little bit for shareholders, so be it. Now, what's interesting here, folks, is that the rich are indeed getting richer because high wage earners can make more money and can more easily keep up with inflation. The low wage earners, on the other hand, individuals in travel, leisure, entertainment and hospitality, individuals who are doing multiple different jobs, individuals who are gig workers, individuals who are most severely impacted by inflation because it's hard for them to keep up with basic bills like gas and utilities. Those individuals are not seeing wage increases. And again, those individuals are the hardest hit by inflation, which unfortunately is a sad reality of the world that we live in. Let me know what you think of this article, and let me know whether you think it's fair or unfair that white collar workers, high wage earners actually see wage increases, but you, in other words, a majority of our fellow Americans, are indeed left behind. Even if you get an increase in your salary, it's eaten up by inflation. Again, it makes the rich richer and it leaves the poor out in the cold. That is exactly what's happening. Let me know what you think. Please click like, please click subscribe, please enable notifications. Please follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is ignition_time. That's ignition_time. Thank you so much for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. Thanks. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.